items before we move on to work plan. All right, in your agenda packet is a grid that includes the items that we discussed at our last meeting. Also, I think it's much easier for many of us is to look at the dots that we created last year. We have a limited amount of time tonight to work on this, and I'd like to avoid relitigating it. Our goal here is to come up with leaders and projects for 2 ad hocs. These will be submitted as part of our work plan, and I think the fastest way to go is potentially to look at them and agree on the top 3, that those top 3 still stand, and vote on which 2 out of those 3 we want to proceed with. Does that sound like a reasonable approach?
Commissioner Estrada?
If I remember correctly, we don't need an ad hoc for all of these. Not all require an ad hoc. For example, review sales tax revenue, maximization strategy. And so, is that a separate process? If a topic does not require an ad hoc, then we will discuss it separately?
So, thanks very much, Commissioner Estrada. So, if we look at the form or the voting from last year, we did determine that these would either be compulsory items or would be items that we wouldn't prioritize as part of our plan. The top 3 that we said would be priority items in which we would have leaders and projects were code enforcement, fostering neighborhood associations / leadership conferences, road shows, broadly a bucket of community outreach, and homelessness. Those were the 3 that we looked at last year. We said, after multiple deliberations and voting, we said those would be the 3 that we would revisit this year. So for tonight, those would be picking 2 of those 3, voting on which one we don't want to focus on, deselect, and then coming up with leaders and a scope to propose to as part of our work plan. Does that answer your question?
No, I was wondering if there would be a separate process for topics that are not very intensive, that are not...
Oh, that we want to do on our own?
My recollection is that... Right. Maybe, Jonathan, your recollection might be better.
So I'm looking at the list here, and there, I think this is what one Commissioner Estrada is getting at. Apologies. Some of these require an ad hoc, some of them require a champion. And so for example, these top 4, fostering neighborhoods, code enforcement, homelessness, public safety, and community choice were all ad hocs. If you go to the next page, participatory budgeting was champion, review sales tax was champion, illegal fireworks was champion. So he's wondering if there's going to be a different process for an ad hoc versus a champion.
So yes, and the matter at hand for us to decide tonight is which 2 ad hocs we want to proceed with.
Thank you, I understand.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. So if you guys are discussing the top 3, I had the opportunity to do some research because one of those 3 would be a repetition of what was a ad hoc the very tail end of last year, which is the homelessness one. So they are time limited. Let me give you the framing around this. They are time limited to 6 months, not just for the concerns of how much staff time they take, but also because the Sunshine / Brown Act laws for public meeting bodies that make decisions get triggered at 6 months. So that is part of the reason that they're short term, because you guys do not have to provide minutes, you don't have to publicly put out your agendas, you don't have to do any of the stuff, allow people to come and participate in your meetings. Therefore, the city takes a position of wanting to make sure that you guys cannot be accused by anybody of trying to hide your decision making. So we recommend at least 6-month break between ad hoc committees. So that's the first thing to consider regarding homelessness. The second thing regarding homelessness is I had a chance to also talk to the department director. And you guys have done a good job so far of already responding to the requests regarding bridge housing and setting up the meetings in your districts. So there may be additional work that comes up, but it's going to be sort of district by district, and it's going to look different. There's a second meeting happening right now in District 9 because it came up as a part of the process of setting up the first meeting. So that probably is not going to require you guys to meet together as a body to discuss. The second thing that was requested was looking at, what was the item that they were looking at, Jonathan? I'm sorry, Commissioner Fleming.
Which one, the dispersion policy?
Yes, the dispersion policy.
Which they're not doing anymore.
Which they're not doing, it's not going to make it onto their work plan for this year. So that would have been the other substantive item, but if neither one of those two things are going to require you guys to weigh in, then I thought you should know that before you make a decision.
Thank you. So given that feedback, do we want to take homelessness off this list? Go ahead.
No. I think that we can possibly recast it a little bit so that it's not a complete redundancy of an extension in violation of the rules, which might be a collision, procedural collision. Recast it a little bit, tag it with a different name, and I think that, and this is not to be just a sort of a thin veil of silliness here. I'm talking about recasting it. There's a lot of meat around the bone of homelessness to take a position with it that we can participate. The other thing is the positioning of the interim housing. I'm sorry, what's the name of it again?
The bridge housing.
Bridge housing. That's not a conclusion. That's sort of like the beginning of the end of bridge housing, and it's really important. It really affects the neighborhoods, and there's a real possibility that there'll be a heavy pushback from certain districts and certain neighborhoods and certain districts, and that's where we live. That's where we should be. If there's pushback, we're there to help, and help get the information into the city about the pushback, and help the information of what the policy decisions that are being made at city council level back to the community. So I would be really against just taking that whole broad brush and pushing it aside. We should maybe tighten it, and maybe it's not, homelessness is pretty broad, right? So let's take where it matters, and then keep it on the agenda.
So
I think probably best position is...
Question. No, sorry, thank you.
Yeah, I am. Thank you.
So we have classes of ad hoc, and then we have champion areas. That would be, that's a free open range, yes? Okay. That might be a bad term to use, but that's okay.
Well, this is where I actually had a question because you guys were talking about this. Because the whole purpose of having this conversation right now is for you guys to finalize your work plan to submit it for council approval. If these are things that you need to produce, you can make a distinction regarding what is an ad hoc and what is a champion. But they would all end up being items on your work plan. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Well,
Mr. Straw.
So I think if I recall correctly, that we previously decided that the items that had champions that did not require an ad hoc would simply move forward. And I'm a little puzzled right now. I think you said we're trying to pick 2 out of 3. I hear topic about 1, and so I personally would rather discuss 3 and figure out which one we drop. If we're trying to pick 2 out of 3.
That is what we're trying to do. We're trying to eliminate 1.
Okay.
We were going to propose, we have 3 compulsory items, and then we have 2 to submit for approval. It sounds to me like, from Sabrina's guidance, that the city, for a number of different reasons, the city's guidance is that homelessness would not be on our work plan. The tendency or the, putting that through on a work plan might be something that you have to revisit.
I think that last statement is accurate.
Okay. So potentially in the interest of time, efficiency, and potentially in the interest of moving forward on multiple tracks, having an approved work plan, which we really want to make sure that that's locked in, proceeding with 2 ad hocs, can we submit 3?
You guys can do whatever you like, to be clear. However, given the current concerns by city staff,
Right.
you guys may trigger a staff recommendation that goes along with your work plan submission.
Sounds ominous. So what, does
not
it
trying
kill
to
the
sound
whole,
ominous,
does
I'm
it
trying
kill
to
the whole
sound
work plan? It just
accurate.
kills, it would potentially kill an item.
Yes.
I just don't know any of us have gone through the formal work plan process approval. Anyone in this room has done that, I don't know. So we don't know what that looks like. But I'm listening carefully to what you're saying in
Well,
light of the recent events.
Anytime something formal like this goes forward, staff has the responsibility to look at what you guys are producing and can either agree wholeheartedly, agree with caveats, or disagree wholeheartedly, and produce a memo that states that information. And what staff takes into consideration are things like staff time and scope and other agreements that the bylaws, which you guys haven't approved yet, but any other sort of policy 0-4, anything else that would govern what you are making recommendations on.
Okay.
So Chair, if I can,
Please, go ahead.
on homelessness, I anticipated something like this was going to happen. So I figured, let's keep the AB 2176 on there, even if we can't start it until our November meeting, that's fine. We'll still be able to get involved, be able to go into the communities, work in the meetings, help with implementation, all of that. And since the dispersion policy is not being addressed by the housing department, well, let's cut it out, that's fine. It's not going to be addressed this year by council anyway. So I figured, let's do something within our scope. Code enforcement, crime, safety, quality of life. And I wrote a new paragraph which says, with over 4,000 units of homeless housing needed to solve this homeless epidemic and to address the fears of NIMBYism, review and evaluate current supportive housing facilities and personal assessment services of homeless persons with the community, focusing on the impacts of homeless-specific affordable housing on residential areas, specifically on the real and perceived impacts to crime, property values, and overall quality of life. So I went on to say, explore whether or not a recommendation to council is warranted that the City of San Jose hire an independent firm, research group, or university to study the impact of supportive homeless housing in neighborhoods, much like MIT PhD Professor George Galster and what he did for the City of Denver, Colorado. Now this is in compliance with Policy 04, Section 5, Authority of Boards and Commissions, Section C, Board and Commission Referral System, Item 1.
So you're proposing that as the scope for the homelessness ad hoc?
Yes. Completely
So-
within the scope of the Neighborhoods Commission, which was the fear of this commission and the fear of city staff.
If that's a motion, I would second that motion.
That is a motion.
So, hold on, 1 second. Just rewinding. So, between code enforcement, outreach, and homelessness, can we deselect one of those before we vote on homelessness?
So code enforcement doesn't have a
Hold
lead.
on. So, can we, between code enforcement, fostering, creating outreach, and homelessness, I think the fastest way to go is to take a vote on, sorry, go ahead.
Which one?
I just want to make clear that fostering is part of voice of the community.
Right.
I mean, people are looking into the ad hoc that David wanted and I absorbed as the chair of the voice of the community. I just want to be clear, this is the voice of the community.
Yep. Okay, good. So how about we do this, just for clarity? Let's go around and take a vote on yay or nay for each one of the three. Councilor?
Chair, before we do that,
I just need some clarification. I'm sorry, I must have missed something here. I thought Sabrina said that we had run out of the homeless ad hoc and we had to take a 6-month hiatus. Now we're going to get the homeless ad hoc reinstated.
We can propose whatever we want.
Okay,
for November.
I see.
Oh, yes.
For November.
Yes.
So what this means then is, until November, we have ad hoc we can propose, let's go through first off. Let's go through and just take a vote on these 3 categories.
Commissioner Estrada?
I forget, at what point does the public, if they have any comments, need to chime in? And I am assuming there is no request for public
Not
comment.
yet? No?
Yeah, we have one.
Oh, we do?
At the end.
Oh,
But that's, well, it's at the commission, but that's at the end.
Okay.
So it's not each agenda?
It's not each
just
agenda,
the-
it's on a
Thank
separate
you.
topic. Thank you for asking.
Before we vote, is there anybody that wants to lead the code enforcement ad hoc? So why don't we take that off the table if nobody wants to lead it,
Yes.
with leaving us with 2, which would be fostering, creating neighborhoods and homelessness.
Let's take a vote on that. Yea or nay? That has multiple leaders. Who are the leaders for those?
What was the question?
So the leaders for fostering, creating
No, it's
neighborhood
just one.
associations.
It's just one,
Wilkins-
it's just one. It's under the voice of the community.
Yeah, so that was Wilkins on paper, who's the lead. Can
I-
we change
I-
that to Perry? Commissioner Henry?
What we did is that we encompassed that into the chair that I was for voice of the community. So I just thought that the naming would go away if I was going to encompass that in the, direction of the voice of the community.
So I think we got that. Which one of you wants to lead it?
I'll go
Oh,
out of that.
Between
Okay.
Dave and, great.
So Commissioner
And
Henry,
I'll be on that too, please.
Semantic as well.
Semantic also, Idreas and Semantic.
give me 1 second here. All right, so we, Commissioner Wilkins, are you on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then Semantic and Idris.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Okay.
And the scope of that,
The document was that.
your document, okay, good. Sunset? Oh, sorry, we haven't voted on it.
Sunrise.
Sunrise, excuse me.
Yeah, Sunrise.
When did it go out of business last year? We got that same 6-month problem. Was it May,
Yeah, we did.
May or June?
That's why it should have been the other name.
Yeah,
We can make it the other
that's what I was trying to do.
No, you can't call it Voice of the Community because it's a continuation. If we narrow the focus to fostering creation of new neighborhood associations, it's the same.
We can call it throat sugar. I don't know. Are we having a problem with the names?
Yes.
So naming it,
Can I?
go ahead.
So the challenge is, if we actually listen to what her instruction is and do that, the voice is like the homeless. It's a huge piece. And my original intent when they were separate items was the creation of the neighborhood association is kind of a subset. And if we say this new ad hoc is that, it's different intent than the voice of the community, and therefore we've abided by Sabrina's guidance. So we can still have him as a lead. All of us who raised our hand, we can still be on it. We'll still end up with slideshows and things like that, but the main focus would be in expanding coverage in the community. Does that make sense?
Sounds fair. Is that legit? Okay.
So what's the name?
What's that?
What's the name then for my notes?
Foster creating neighborhood associations.
Now, do we have a Sunrise and Sunset?
That can, since it's different, that can start.
I can start immediately. I can start. So the earliest I can start then is next month, 9/13.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes,
And you want to go the full 6 months?
yes.
Okay. So we'll do 3/14, or that's our next meeting. That may be 6 months in a day. Is that okay?
That's, I'm sure.
Okay. And the scope is the same. correct?
Yes, as the fostering.
Okay. And the definition is the same as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Then I believe we need an official motion.
So moved?
Second.
Now we're on to homelessness.
Okay, so as I understand homelessness, it would be an ad hoc. Sabrina, if we're proposing this as part of our work plan, the soonest it would start, if it's approved, is November.
Yes.
Okay, can't be the same scope as last time.
No, and in fact, I would encourage you to do what he just did and really narrow the title of your
Okay,
ad hoc as well.
okay, great. So, Jonathan, what was the scope that narrows the title and narrows the scope?
So we could narrow the title to AB 2176 and impact of supportive housing on neighborhoods.
That sounds good.
I might just leave it to the second half of that.
I'll just leave up to you.
So the title, we can do that, but I definitely want to keep AB
Yeah, you can leave
2176.
that in the definition because
Okay.
So the title is,
Impact of supportive housing on neighborhoods.
And what's the scope?
All right, let me read this over. So I can get rid of this beginning part. I don't So with over 4,000 units of homeless housing needed to solve the homeless epidemic and to address the fears of NIMBYism, review and evaluate current supportive housing facilities and personal assessment services of homeless persons with the community, focusing on the impacts of homeless-specific affordable housing on residential areas, specifically on the real and perceived impacts to crime, property values, and overall quality of life. Explore whether or not a recommendation to council is warranted that the City of San Jose hire an independent firm, research group, and/or university to study the impact of supportive homeless housing in the neighborhoods of San Jose, much like MIT PhD Professor George Galster did for the City of Denver, Colorado. This is in Compliance Policy 04, Section 5, C1.
So, can I ask you, so you're, okay.
I recommend tighten it way down and leaving a lot of it out as the group will certainly pursue presents appropriate and scope. The more tightened scope.
I think that's exactly right.
Otherwise, I think you're going to get a swale of city council passing off the wall.
So I think that to really narrow it down, get rid of that whole thing, explore whether or not a recommendation to City Council is warranted that the City of San Jose hire an independent firm, research group, university, study the impact of supportive homeless housing in neighborhoods of San Jose.
I think I would hire research or something. It's hard to spend money. Probably no recommend. They do spend money, but I would just soften it a little bit. So.
Wanted the City of San Jose engage. Awesome, thank you. City of San Jose engage an independent firm, research group, and/or university to study the impact of supportive homeless housing in the neighborhoods of San Jose. Sound good?
One question?
Yeah.
So it sounds, see, I would have deleted the second half and kept the first half, because now the scope really is your determination to outsource a decision, and you really wanted to get in and solve stuff. And if you leave the first half in as your scope, and then that second half is one of the tools that you're going to use, you're not narrow. The way it is right now, it's like somebody's going to pick up the phone and go through city manager to have the city council authorize a consultant, and then you're done.
Okay. This would be so much easier if we put it on board and everybody wordsmith it, but that's okay. Commissioner Estrada?
It's my perception that the city council wants to move quickly to address the situation, and so I worry that proposing a study that could take 2 years might not be consistent with that, and so I wonder if maybe the actual solution should not be identified. And so you're exploring something, but it's not necessarily just this one item.
The first half of your scope was perfect. I just stopped
I
at like
agree.
sentence 2.
It seems consistent with what he's, it seems consistent with one statement is, with what you're saying. And I concur, I think that's much more.
So you think it should be beginning with over 4,000 units of homeless housing needed to solve the homeless epidemic and to address the fears of NIMBYism. Review and evaluate current supportive housing facilities and personal assessment services of homeless persons within the community, focusing on the impacts of homeless-specific affordable housing on residential areas, specifically on the real and perceived impacts of
No,
crime,
stop,
property
stop.
values.
I cut out that last little bit and just,
And determine whether to make a recommendation.
yeah.
So the one question that I would have is if we don't put in the crime, property values, overall quality of life, they may say that it's out of our scope and try to push it off to the housing commission, which that is not in their scope.
You're,
Right.
Yeah.
I withdraw my disagreement.
Okay, thank you.
But I wouldn't go any longer, right after that, cut.
Yeah, okay.
I know you're calling in folks. Commissioner Semanik, do you have a question?
Yeah, I wouldn't use residential. I think just keep it neighborhoods.
Okay.
I mean, again, that's our charter. I mean, it may be wordsmithing, but I think it's more powerful.
So I'll get rid of residential areas, put in neighborhoods.
Right.
Okay, Commissioner Lebowski?
Since we're in real time, because it has to be very interactive. The very first opening, it sounds like it's helping define problems. It's also very slant. It sounds, to avoid NIMBYism, it's like, let's just throw that out. I think it reads better if it's not sounding like a foregone conclusion.
So you think we should take out that whole thing with over 4,000 units of homeless
Yes.
housing needed? Okay, so just get rid of that,
Everybody
start
knows,
at,
everybody knows what this is. I think this council really knows what this is. So they don't have to have products, the project sort of defined for them, although many citizens would need that. They do.
perfect, I think that helps a lot. So we'll start it off then as review and evaluate current supportive housing facilities, personal assessment services of homeless persons with the community, focusing on the impacts of homeless-specific affordable housing on neighborhoods, specifically on the real and perceived impacts to crime, property value, overall quality of life.
Yes.
Perfect.
You guys are awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
It's my first time doing this, and that came out pretty good.
And that is a different scope than what we had last time for homelessness and drug addiction.
It's very different.
Commissioner Semanik has a question.
No, I think the way it's been rewritten is fine. I think it's very important that we have a different bent. I think now the way it's been rewritten is solid.
So my question then would be to Sabrina, can we start it earlier than November, or should we keep it at November, since now it is, instead of homelessness, impact of supportive housing on neighborhoods? So a totally different scope.
It is.
This is where we start running into a question of, yes, it is a different scope than previously, but to the layperson who's looking at this and is asking what it's about and gets a one-word answer, are they going to think it's the same thing? It's about perception, public perception. I would err on the side of caution and say you guys should wait till November.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
November when?
So
Is this
November
talking
8th,
about a couple of months?
November 8th is our next meeting, but that's not a full 6 months. So that would be like about 5 days before.
You guys could start it then the 5 days later, because it's an ad hoc committee, you guys can meet whenever, so you can meet in November after the commission meeting.
Okay. So then just to be safe, I'll put it on that next week. I'll put it on November 15th.
Sorry, who is the lead and who are the members?
Me.
Yeah, I was volunteer for membership.
Awesome.
If we're there, I don't know.
No, I have a question. I have a question. Can you repeat the scope?
Yes. Review and evaluate current supportive housing facilities and personal assessment services of homeless persons with the community, focusing on the impact of homeless-specific affordable housing on neighborhoods, specifically on the real and perceived impacts to crime, property values, and overall quality of life.
What's the deliverable there?
We're meeting,
What's the output of that? So if I'm a member of the public and I hear that, I like it better than a recommendation to decide whether or not to hire a consultant. That sounds like more is getting done to end the problem of homelessness. But it's like, sounds to me like that's, if we could all work on that full time. And I would want to know what's the output? Is it a report? Is it a PowerPoint deck that gives our analysis? What's the deliverable?
well, it's within the scope of our commission, so that's to review and evaluate, different functions within the city. So we're reviewing and evaluating what the impact of supportive housing is to communities. We're getting
And
community.
what's the, at the end of 6 months,
So at the
is
end
it a
of that,
spreadsheet that says this many crimes are reported, this many,
possibly,
whatever?
possibly. Well, at the end of it, I believe we'll write a letter of recommendation to the city council for whatever we believe the community finds to be the most important.
How homelessness is impacting them? Okay.
Yes.
I agree, I just think, let's be explicit and say, provide a recommendation if warranted or something.
That would help. I mean,
And then they'll know what we're trying to do. Oh, they're trying to maybe give us a recommendation.
they're not trying to duplicate the efforts of existing departments. Then that would certainly be called out of scope, if I were approving the work plan.
So we can write one extra sentence that says, deliverable letter recommendation to city council on the impact of supportive housing on neighborhoods.
I mean, that sounds,
Sound good?
yeah.
Commissioner Estrada, sound good?
I love it.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Any other comments, questions on this? Any other comments? We do have a member of the public who wishes, no, hold on. Hold on, sorry. Thank you. So do we have a leader for this proposed ad hoc?
Yes.
Commissioner
Commissioner
Fleming
Fleming.
is leading.
I'm typing and volunteering.
Typing and volunteering at the same time. And who would like to serve on this committee, this ad hoc? Commissioner Semanek, Commissioner Lebowski. And we can all provide input as we wish. Great. Do we need to vote? Or?
Yes, you need a motion.
Okay. Motion to create the ad hoc, homelessness ad hoc.
All motion.
Can we
Okay.
do
Second.
one last thing? We need a sunset before we can do
Thanks.
that. Just want to make sure everything's buttoned up tight. That would be a sunset of around May 9th. That's the meeting then. Okay, so sunrise, November 15th, 2017, sunset 5/9/2017. It is to review.
2018.
18.
Oh, gosh. Time is flying. Review and evaluate current supportive housing facilities and personal assessment services of homeless persons with the community, focusing on the impact of homeless-specific affordable housing on neighborhoods, specifically on the real and perceived impacts to crime, property values, overall quality of life, with the deliverable of the letter of recommendation to City Council. I'm the leader, Commissioner Lebowski, Commissioner Semanek, joining the team, and definition, I'm just going to copy what we put in the scope, so it'll be the same thing. So now, do we have a motion?
All motion.
Second.
Who's counting? Yours, Quinn?
Was yours a red?
Mine is.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can we then have all the ayes
Oh,
separately?
thank you, sir. Ayes.
Okay.
Nays. Abstentions. Thank you.